If you want to find out why it doesn't really matter what your goals are, how watching TV is actually different from playing tennis, and get a new take on the definition of success and how you can achieve it, well, watch on because I'm about to review this book. It's called Flow and it's written by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, apparently that's how you pronounce it. And if you don't know me already, I'm Sigurd. I make videos about self and world exploration, and when it comes to self-exploration, this is a pretty good book. I'd go as far to say that it can potentially be life-changing for you. So what is the book about? Well, it's building on the notion that a combination of external reasons and internal reasons and your own consciousness is what defines how happy you are in a given situation. So what's your situation like externally, and how do you deal with it, and how does your mind interpret what's going on? And if you learn to control your own consciousness like that, and you achieve the state of flow in more situations than previously, and that you have that as often as possible in your life, then you have kind of won at life, to put it that way. And then the book goes into how you can achieve that flow, but before you can find that out, you have to know what is flow. So what does the book say about flow? What is flow? Well, it has a given set of characteristics, which I'll read to you right now from the book. So, flow. A sense that one's skills are adequate to cope with the challenges at hand in a goal-directed, rule-bound action system that provides clear clues as to how well one is performing. Concentration is so intense that there is no attention left over to think about anything irrelevant or to worry about problems. Self-consciousness disappears and the sense of time becomes distorted. An activity that produces such experiences is so gratifying that people are willing to do it for its own sake, with little concern for what they will get out of it. This is powerful, and I'm sure you have experienced this before, right? You do something that's challenging, but you know that you have some skills so that you're able to do it, and you just completely are absorbed into that activity. And in the subsequent chapters, it goes into how to achieve flow in different situations, how to use your physical senses to achieve flow, how to use your brain mentally to achieve flow, and how you achieve flow at work, and how you achieve flow in relation to other people. I'm not going to go in depth in all of those chapters because you'll have to read the book to get that, but they are quite interesting. And another thing that it goes into pretty early is the difference between enjoyment and pleasure, which is what makes flow so great. And I've been thinking about this on my own, but I never really found a good way to put it into words. How is watching TV different from playing tennis or rock climbing or composing music? It sounds like the latter should be better, but why? And that's the key here, that watching TV leads to pleasure, but not to enjoyment. That's what these other activities can do. And, well, what's the difference? Well, pleasure is something that doesn't really require attention and skill. You just sit down and watch TV, for instance, or you can be listening to music, potentially that can be pleasure. Eating food can also be pleasure. But then when you go into other things that require some sort of skill and require involvement and concentration, that goes into enjoyment, and that can lead to flow as well. Because as described, flow requires concentration, it requires some sort of skill, and another key aspect that he goes into is that flow lies between boredom and anxiety. Boredom if it's too easy for you, and anxiety if it's too hard, right? But if the challenges match your skills, then it's flow. And as your skills develop, then it has to be harder as well. If there's a graph of skill and difficulty, it has to go up like that. And it does as you progress and improve your skill. And one of the things that's interesting is that they mention in the book that they've taken surveys when people feel happy, and when they watch TV, they're actually not really happy. They feel quite bland, or that they're not achieving much. But that when they are in a situation where they are maybe at work and they want to watch TV, well, that's something they want to do. So pleasure is often something that you want to do when you're doing other things, but when you're doing it, you don't really feel a sense of accomplishment. But that's what you do with enjoyment. So that's what you try to do, more of enjoyment activities than pleasure activities. One of the interesting chapters he mentions when it goes into the different aspects of flow, or where in life you can achieve flow, is the one about senses. Because just having senses, just seeing and just hearing, can actually be sources of flow, but you have to set yourself up for success, kind of. So let's use the example to listen to music. If you just walk somewhere and you listen to music on your iPhone when you're on the commute, something like that, it often doesn't lead to flow at all. But when you sit down in a comfortable chair, relax, put on some music on the speakers and really try to focus and concentrate, picking out the different instruments, comparing different recordings of the same piece of music, the same song, that can actually lead to flow. So what matters is not so much what you do, but more how you do it. And if you approach it with that level of concentration and skill that it does, and the level of going in depth into something, then you can achieve it. And one more thing is the self-consciousness that sort of disappears. If you're listening to music on your commute, you might be thinking about what I'm going to wear tomorrow, what will I have for dinner, and what will my boss think of me. But you don't really think of that when you sit down and immerse yourself into music. So just having those things so very basic as your senses of hearing and senses of sight can actually lead to flow. So as I mentioned, flow requires concentration and really being present in the moment. And that kind of leads me to think about a quote from Seneca from On the Shortness of Life, which is that the enemy of living is expectation, which relies on tomorrow and waits today. So just relying on tomorrow and thinking about things that are going to happen and worrying about the future is not really productive thing to do while you're in those activities that you want to stimulate flow with. And the last chapter goes into life in general, because the previous chapters cover certain activities and how you achieve flow there, but life in general is also kind of one big activity, right? And one thing that Csikszentmihalyi talks about is creating a life theme. That's the word he uses, and it's basically what is the goal that you want to achieve in life, what are the big goals that you want to achieve in life. And as I said, it doesn't really matter what those goals are. But what is important, as it says here in a quote, is that you choose your goals yourself. Because that leads to, as it says here, this fact results in two seemingly opposite outcomes. On the one hand, having a feeling of ownership of your decisions, the person is more strongly dedicated to her goals. Her actions are reliable and internally controlled. On the other hand, knowing them to be her own, she can more easily modify her goals whenever the reasons for pursuing them no longer make sense. So you should create your own goals, but it doesn't really matter what they are. If you want to create a goal that you believe in, it doesn't really matter because everything you do on the way to that goal is a potential flow activity. And it makes all makes sense, like the reason for doing that flow activity is the end goal you have in mind. But it's not much more than that. It's the reason you do what you do, but while you do it, the feeling of flow and the sense of flow is what you want to achieve. And that's what he calls success in life, when you achieve the flow state as often as possible. Of course, the goal can't be anything. It can't really be that your goal is to go bankrupt, because you don't want to work towards that goal. But if the goal is something that you personally believe in, and as he wrote there in the quote, you can change it if you want to. But having a life theme and a set of goals that you believe in can lead you to flow and success no matter what those goals happen to be. So to conclude, I would like to sum up some of my personal lessons that I've learned from this book. And one of them is certainly that I should want to move more activities from pleasure activities to enjoyment activities. To spend more time doing things that require skill and attention, like for me personally, playing music and composing music even. I'm not really good at that, but I want to challenge myself and I want to do that. Physical exercise, sometimes getting really involved in music and what I see and just use that as a potential flow activity, going outside, hiking, traveling, but with that right mindset of requiring skill and attention and really delving deep into it. Another lesson I've learned from the book is that I remind myself to control consciousness when I can. So given a certain situation that I'm in, how can I control my consciousness and how can I use the principles from this book here to become more happy and more successful, more involved in what I do? How can the seemingly boring activity that I'm doing right now be transformed into a flow activity? And the third lesson I've learned is to create a life theme for myself and create goals that I actually believe in myself, and I'm making sure that those goals are not really put onto me by others and expectations of others, but it's something that I really want for myself. And based on those goals, I can use that as sort of a justification for all activities I do, and I can check my feedback and see if I'm moving towards them, and that in itself is going to lead me to a more complete and flow-filled life. So I hope you liked this video and I hope you took some lessons out of this book. It's a great one and it's not very long, it's 240 pages, so I really recommend checking out the book. I'm going to put a link in the description for you. And yeah, I hope you liked the review, I hope you found it useful, and I'm going to see you in the next video, whether that be a review video or just something completely different related to self and word exploration. See you then.